Science knowledge only adds to the excitement, the mystery, and the awe of a flower.
Evidence is evidence. It's public. Everybody can look at the evidence and assess it, and eventually, if there's enough evidence, come to the same conclusion.
For newcomers and old-timers alike, the Chloe Sanctuary hopes to give you insight into the health and happiness of your companion parrots. We hope to help you build happy homes using reliable and proven tools. The best homes are built on a rock-solid foundation. And the best foundation for a happy home is the bedrock of science. When we stand on the shoulders of giants, the scientists who have worked long and diligently to understand our companions, we can reach new heights of understanding. And understanding is the key to success. What does avian veterinary medicine have to tell us about our feathered friends? How can we prevent illness, see the signs of disease before it's too late, and care for our birds through ill health? What light does behavioral science shed on their nature, needs, and hopes? How can the tools of behavior shaping make our homes happier for us and our companions? How can we deal with biting, screaming, or other misbehavior? What is it like to live among parrots? Let them roam around about you and share a life with them. How much freedom do you give them? What happens if you form a bond of trust with them? Watch and see what understanding their true nature can do for you. Come with us on a journey as we do more than examine a parrot's world. We live in it. Make some popcorn and bring in a few wood blocks. Let everyone have something to chew and a comfortable place to perch. Cockatude is a presentation of the Chloe Sanctuary for Parrots and Cockatoos, a nonprofit charity dedicated to the empowerment of captive parrots and public awareness.
Hi, and welcome to Cockatude 48. Parrot Controversies. He said, she said, and who knows? Hi, I'm Don with the Chloe Sanctuary for Parrots and Cockatoos. I'm the executive director, and with me, the stars of the show, Coco, Peaches, Babaloo, Cecil, Lorelai, Snowball, Chloe in the box. Hi, Chloe in the box. Salamander, and Sugarbird. Hi, Sugar. What are you doing huffing over there? You got cameras? You don't like cameras? You don't like that? You have a problem with cameras? So does Cecil. He gets nippy. You get nippy, don't you? All right, you two. No hanky-panky. Chloe and Snowball used to be a number, so I have to keep them apart. He got nature, aggression, and that's really dangerous. No, you're not doing that. No, you're not. In fact, I'm going to move you a little farther apart. Let me do that. You guys know. Here, come here. Come on. Bob, leave her alone. Leave her alone. Yeah, Chloe? Yeah, Chloe? Well said, Salamander. Well said. Good boy. Good boy. Hi, good boy. This boy hurt his foot. You have to be careful what you have in a cage. He has a tendency to throw his food and water bowls all over the place. And if something happened and he didn't get care, he could be starving. Are you going to calm down, or do I have to cover your eye? We've You've got your vote. You want to cover her eyes? Is that what you want? Yeah. But he's doing much better. The biggest danger if they injure themselves is infection. So he's on Baytril, which is an antibiotic. Aren't you, boy? And he goes, I don't know. It doesn't taste too bad. Doesn't taste too bad, does it? Yeah, it's not too bad. So we haven't dealt with the controversies surrounding parrots much. There are arguments all over the place about certain issues. So we're going to cover those today. But the first thing we're going to do is talk about, how do you know? How do you know if something's true or not? What's the litmus test? And years ago, an astrophysicist who was well known, he did the first Cosmos series, Carl Sagan, he came up with what was called the baloney detection kit. More recently, Michael Shermer updated it, and you can see that online if you look up Michael Shermer. We'll put a link to in our show notes, but if you look up Michael Shermer and baloney detection, you can actually see a video where he talks about this. But that's a good boy, Salamander. I have to reward him. Very good. I have to reward him for his pleasant sounds, but these 10 are something you should apply whenever you're dealing with. Is this true about birds? I mean, really, should I give them coconut oil? I know, Chloe. I know. You have a box over there. You should go play in the box. If you come over here, it's going to be a fight. Oh, I wouldn't do that. Oh, I wouldn't do that, Chloe.
Peaches is an amazing personality. Her daily maintenance requires dedication and mindfulness. She requires 2 forms of medicine, 7-course meals, and effort to entice her to eat. Extensive preening every day, special tools to trim nails, constant attention to her vocalizations, daily walks, and twice yearly checkups due to the possibility of impacted feather follicles and the nature of her spinal injuries. It seems a common misconception among the general public that parrots are like toys in a toy box. Nothing could be further from the truth. They are complex creatures. Recently, scientific studies have shown them to be at least as intelligent as chimpanzees. Every captive parrot needs special humans who will dedicate themselves to understanding them, those who know their species as it lives in the wild, special people that understand their social, mental, and physical needs. They need to be understood for what they are, and not as merely human companions, as circus performers to bring smiles. Peaches needs all this and more. She is our special girl. Will you help us care for Peaches? Please make a donation today at our website, chloesanctuary.org. That's spelled CHLOESANCTUARY.org. As a special thank you for your donation, we will joyfully send you a postcard with Peach's happy face.
Chloe! No, 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 no. No, no, no. Pop? Coco? Chloe, that wasn't a smart. Now go over here. Yeah, you get yourself in a real pickle when you do that. You gotta kind of stay away, okay? You can come over when Bob and Coco aren't in here. What are you doing, kid? How reliable is the source of the claim? Sometimes people who are not experts, they seem reliable. You hear what they say, and they say it with conviction, like, you know, I gave bananas to my bird, and he stopped picking his feathers. And they can say it with real determination, you know, like, this is the fact. And then I told so-and-so, and they did it, and you know what? Their bird stopped picking too. Well, they're not experts, they're not veterinarians, they're not scientists. So the odds are, you know, you have to start discounting anything that's coming from an unreliable source, okay? And you can see how we can build on this once we go from one to the next. Number 2. Does the source often make similar claims? So, in other words, like, well, I know there's a Sasquatch because I saw those pictures, you know, and have you seen the pictures of the Sasquatch? Well, yeah, well, I know there's a Sasquatch. They're just trying to hide it, but they're out there. Then you'll have, well, I've seen UFOs. I know I've seen UFOs. I've actually seen them, and one of my friends was taken up into space. Now, they start making similar claims that are kind of outlandish and don't have any basis in fact. We've never seen a picture of a Sasquatch. Show me one. Show me an actual picture. Show me their droppings. Show me a dead body. Okay, I'll believe. Then I'll start considering that I might, you know, that this might be true. I'll have to look and make sure. I'll have to see if the experts checked it out, and by George, there's an unknown DNA there, and yes, indeed, this is a different species. Okay, but they're making similar claims that are unfounded. So that's one. Do they make similar claims? Number 3. Have the claims been verified by another source? Now you will certainly find people who will say, well, I believe in Sasquatch, and I believe in Sasquatch. And if you look out there, you'll see the belief in Sasquatch. There are many websites that say that, but we're looking for reliable sources, like somebody who has scientifically, you know, and proven it. They brought in a dead body and shown, here is a Sasquatch. You're probably not going to find that. So if you can't find outside verification, if one person says, well, bananas will solve feather picking, and another, you know, a couple of others say it, but if you look and you can't find any reliable scientific, no veterinarian has ever said it, you don't see any abstracts out there from scientific studies that show that bananas stop feather picking, then it's probably not true, okay? Four. Okay. Does the claim fit with how we know the world is? So, if someone says, well, you know, I've got this snake oil, I bought this snake oil from this guy, and I had cancer, and I drank this snake oil, and I don't have cancer anymore, well, you know, we can probably discount that. It's probably not the case that drinking snake oil from somebody who's not a medical doctor is going to cure your cancer. Because we know that's not the way the world works. The world doesn't work that way. We don't just, like, sprinkle a little magic fairy dust on Bob and his cloaca problem goes away. Instead, we go to medical, we take him to the vet, and the vet says, okay, well, he's got a prolapse, we're going to sew it up. And they explain that you can do this. You can, got me in the face, silly. Laura like it. She's the only one that can really spook me because she moves just when I don't expect it. But we know, and you can see it in the Basaba manual, there are basically 6 surgeries you can do for it. You want to start working on the outside first, and then when that fails, you start working on the inside. And then eventually they're going to die. I mean, it's just the way it's going to work, and you're not going to stop it. So you can't sprinkle magic fairy dust on it. Number 5. Has anyone gone out of their way, anyone that you're looking at their website or you're listening to them, have they gone out of their way to try to disprove what they're saying? So that's one of the things that happens in science. I mean, you're also trying to make sure that you've covered all your bases when you're doing a study. Because other people are going to go, let's see what you've done here. Well, what do you call that? That doesn't make any sense. Did you plan this out? You missed a hole. There's something wrong with your thinking here. So people, they're going to look at, and the community of people, let's say if you were a biologist and you publish something that has to do with biology, they're going to look at it, they're going to review it, and they're going to say, this doesn't make any sense. Or they're going to try to duplicate it, and it's not going to work. So the question, has anyone tried to disprove it? And specifically, is the person who's telling you about it, have they tried to disprove their own claim? We all have a thing called confirmation bias. In other words, you know how people go, well, everything happens in threes, and I just had a car accident, so something else bad's going to happen. So things go along, a good thing happens, another thing that doesn't, it's neither good nor bad happens. But the next thing that comes along, like, whoops, something falls out of the refrigerator and splat, you got grape jelly all over the floor. Well, that's number 2. We count the hits and not the misses, okay? So all these different things happened before that. Now we count number 2. Then later on, something else happens. We count number 3. Then we stop counting. Then later on, something happens and we go 1, 2. So in other words, we're only counting the hits. It's very similar to what happens when they say that birds have dominance. You know, they say parrots have dominance. Well, they don't, okay? They don't have a bird on your shoulder because they can be dominant. There's no dominance. We know from studies that have been done that there's no dominance or hierarchy in birds. Bear with me a second. I gotta stop this again. You need to get out of there and leave her alone. I'm working on teaching them. If you wonder why I would even allow them in this situation, I'm teaching them to stay apart. So even though we're doing this, I'm still teaching. So confirmation bias is, well, I know it because I've seen it. Well, you're only seeing what you want to see. And number 6. We hope you will consider supporting us on Patreon today. This is how it works. We produce up to 2 videos a month. As a patron, you pledge to give us a donation, whatever you feel is right and meets your budget. Patreon gives us your gift monthly. You can easily set a limit on how much you donate a month. You can change the amount of your pledge at any time. Your gift will allow us to continue bringing you entertaining and informative videos. Patreon.com/Chloe Sanctuary. We look forward to your participation in Cockatude. Does the preponderance, does the greatest amount of evidence point to their conclusion or to some other? So if someone says, oh, well, bananas cure feather taking, but the evidence, if you look out there, there's no evidence out there for that. So look to where the preponderance of evidence is, okay, where the majority of the evidence lies. You keep an open mind too, but that doesn't mean in a mind that's so open that your brain falls out, okay? Excuse me. Right here. Okay. There you go, Sal. There you go, Sal. all better? Want to be a part of the party? Is that what it's all about? Is the person making the claims using accepted methods of research and reason? Or are they doing something different? Are they avoiding reason and just making claims? Some people will abandon reason and they won't research in order to get the conclusion that they want. Okay? So you want to avoid that. You want to make sure they're actually using accepted methods of reasoning. All right, calm down, Bob. Calm down. It's okay. It's all right. Cool. Bob. Coco, leave Chloe alone. Bob, it's okay. I know you're a good boy. But let her sit up there. If she wants to sit up there that far away, let her do it, okay? Good boy. This is a big one for him. He's starting to let her on. He's starting to let her on the couch a little bit. No, we're not doing that. I'm not going over there, no. Sit right here. Sit right there. I need 2 hands. You're not going up there to bother. Come on. No. Get down here. That's a good boy. Yes, you're a good boy. Yes, you're a good boy. No mating. Number 8. Is the person making the assertion, are they denying? Are they denying something, saying this isn't true? Or are they actually trying to provide some kind of explanation for their point of view? Okay. And again, we have to go back, is it reasonable? You have to follow all the other rules, but that's another thing. Are they just trying to say, that's very beautiful, Peaches. What a great song. What a great song. Oh, hi, Coco. Oh, hi there, Cecil. You're not going to start that. No, Mr. Aggressive. No, Mr. Aggressive. How are you doing? And number 9, if someone provides an explanation for something, does it account for everything the old explanation did? I mean, in other words, if they say that the Earth is flat and they explain why that's the case, does it explain all the other things we see, like the motions of the planets and the stars around the Earth? Does it explain all that? They need to explain at least as much as the other theory held. Okay? So if they're trying to prove that bananas will solve feather destructive behavior, they have to prove that it works in every case with all these different birds. And where are you going? You're not going to start screaming again, I hope. Because I'll come over and get you again. I will. You silly bird. Number 10. Whoever's making the claim, is their claim driving their beliefs, or is it the other way around? Have they formed their beliefs because of what they've studied and researched? Or do they have an idea in their head already and they're trying to prove it? You want to go with the one who's looking at the facts, looking at the phenomena around them, and seeing what's actually happening or trying to figure it out, reasoning it out, as opposed to the one who goes, well, I know how things are and it's going to fit in my particular world this way. So that's the basic baloney detection kit, 1 through 10. So the first controversial issue is over-the-counter natural medicine. Okay. Alternative medicine. many parrot lovers are skeptical of using prescribed veterinary medicines for their birds. So they'll go to a Whole Foods store, they'll go to a health food store, they'll go somewhere and get something off the shelf from the supplements section and give it to their birds. There's a number of things wrong with that, but for example, some things you might give them, like if you get tea tree oil, they say that's good for infections, right? But if you put it on a bird, it could kill them. I mean, their skin is different than ours. They're only 3 layers thick, and in some spots, it's only 7 cells deep. So you could actually be, if you were to take tea tree oil, put it in a syringe and shoot it into your bloodstream, I don't think you'd survive. So you have to be careful. Always check with your avian vet. But more than that, stay away from the alternative medicine section. There's nothing there that's going to help your birds. 3 separate long-term studies have been done on, for example, homeopathy, proving beyond a shadow of a doubt that it doesn't work. It's pretty scientific anyway. The guy that came up with it before we really understood what was going on in living systems. So if you really study the idea, it's laughable. But there are people who buy it and use it, and it's like buying water because there's nothing in it. But and you can get out there and look at those studies. In fact, the Attorney General of New York commissioned a study on, and it involved, I think it was 4 different stores that were selling our so-called alternative medicine or supplements, and they found that they were mostly fillers. There was sometimes the item you were actually getting wasn't even in it. If you wanted ginkgo biloba, it wasn't even in there. There are other stuff, but not the actual item. It's not a regulated industry, so you never know. One thing that really shocked me is that some of them had asparagus. Asparagus is poisonous to parrots, so stay away from the alternative medicine because it's dangerous as well as ineffectual. You're going to have, too, a lot of people on the internet, some of them your friends, they'll suggest things that are alternative medicine. An example is one lady had a picture of her bird. I just happened to see it on Facebook, and she had a picture of her bird, and it was an Amazon, and it had dark splotches, like circular dark splotches on its feathers. So I'd seen it before in the Basala manual for citizen birds, which is a veterinary manual. So I went and looked and found it, and it's a type of yeast infection in the feathers that indicates that there's a liver problem. So there were people telling her, oh, use this on the feathers, and you shouldn't put anything but water on their feathers, or if they get blood on them, you can use hydrogen peroxide to get the blood off, but you really shouldn't put anything other than water on your bird's feathers. So all these well-meaning people suggesting do this, do that. Cecil, you trying to whack me with that thing? No, you just want to. You just like to play, and that's the way you play. You're a good bird. So, I mean, I told her, I said, it's an indication of a liver problem. Get your bird to the vet right away. Fortunately, the bird survived. But these well-meaning people were basically issuing a death sentence to that bird. Because if they've got liver problems and you don't deal with it using the proper medicine, you're talking about your bird dying. So be careful when you see people saying, well, this works and that works. If they don't have... I don't have it. They're not veterinarians. I'm not an expert. I go to the experts. I go to veterinarians. I read the veterinary manuals. I have clinical avian medicine, and I have the Basala manual for citizen birds, and I have the manual of parrot behavior, which has a lot of medical in it as well as behavioral. So I go to the vet first, and then I look up and confirm what they've told me, and then I learn more about it, so I'm more alert. A good example is that I had Chloe. She was shooting out. Her poop had about 5 times as much liquid in it as it should. Okay, it was the clear urine, and the rest was scant. There wasn't much there, so I had to give her intramuscular antibiotics. Now what happens with them is they have a special thing called a renal shunt, and it can actually bypass their kidneys, and when that happens, they'll start dumping out a bunch of liquid. But on the web, there were people saying, well, give them this, or give them aloe vera juice, or change their diet. All of that, straight to the vet. Don't take any of that advice, okay, without seeing a professional, an expert in the field, which is an avian vet. Even they can miss things at times, but go there first and then start researching. Maybe you'll find something they missed. Or maybe you see something that they can't see because they're only going to see the bird for 5 minutes or whatever. That's happened to me where I saw something and I said, nah, this bird needs x-rays. And it came out that there was a spot on the kidney, the left kidney, and when they took it off, this other, what looked like a neurological problem with the leg, they couldn't move their leg, went away. But the vet hadn't suggested the x-rays. I did. The vet's much smarter about this stuff, knows much more than I do. But I knew the bird, and I've known the bird for a long time, so to me it seemed like she didn't have any other neurological issues. I thought it had to be something physical. Let's do x-rays. Okay. So that's why you should know something too. You should try to become as much of an expert as you can. Defer to them at first, but always go back and try to learn, because it's really important if you're going to keep them healthy and happy. That's part of your responsibility, is to know about them, and they are not built like we are. So, and the books that I'm talking about, I'll make sure they're in the show notes too. And if I don't, kick me in the rear and tell me to put them in there, okay? Just send me an email or make a note, or just let me know some way that I failed to do it, because I do get busy and I sometimes fail to get things in the show notes I want to. So, what are you doing? Why are you guys chewing that all up? Doesn't matter. Go ahead. Just leave Peaches alone. I can see Peaches watching you. She doesn't trust you. Yeah, I had a long discussion with one lady about her bird with feather destructive behavior, and I explained to her the protocol that Dr. Jenkins had, and how much it's worked for all of our birds here, and she kept saying, well, I don't want to give my birds any kind of psychotherapeutic medicine. I don't really want to do that. At the end of the conversation, I'm trying to help for quite some time, she said, well, I think I'll just give him more bananas. And that's why I say, if you think about alternative medicine and you make that your first choice, then you're acting bananas, and you don't want to do that. But on the Rational Wiki, defines alternative medicine this way. Alternative medicine is any medical treatment that is not part of conventional evidence-based medicine, such as one would learn in a medical school, nursing school, or even paramedic training. Much, if not most, of the alternative medicine world lacks any scientific proof of its effectiveness. And that which does have real effectiveness tends to simply relieve pain, be a mere placebo, or not address the root cause of a problem. Any alternative medicine with scientific evidence behind it is simply called medicine. And that's a good description of it from the Rational Wiki, which is a great place to go if you want to learn about how to do some clear thinking. The Rational Wiki is a great place to go. But always check with your avian vet. That's the place to see the experts first, and the ones that know these guys. If you watch some of our other videos, then you know they're not built like us. And some of our assumptions, when I have a little injury on my hand, I put that on it. We're not built the same. Our skin isn't the same as theirs. We can't do that. They don't breathe the same way we do. They don't even evacuate their feces and urine and all that the same way we do. They're so different that you really need to see an expert. The next controversy, wing clipping. And there are flame wars about this. Well, you should clip your birds. What if they get out the door? And then there's the other ones that say, you shouldn't clip your birds because it's not right. It's not natural. They're meant to fly. So why do birds fly? Okay, to socialize, to find mates, to find breeding and nesting sites, to escape danger and predators. Those are the main reasons they fly. Okay, it's also their main form of exercise. So why would someone clip wings? It seems the first reason that you won't find in any list is because they've seen it done. I remember seeing a video when I was taking my training and in applied behavior analysis. And the video that we were shown by the professor was this beautiful home with a nice area for birds, birds pan on the walls and, like an outside screened area and where they could hang out. And then the birds sitting on their perches and all that in that area. And then you went around the corner into the house. They followed it all the way around the corner. And inside there was a cage, and inside the cage was a poodle. So here's a dog locked in a cage, and you go, that's not right. You wouldn't lock a dog in a cage. Well, we get used to it. We grow up. Hey, baby. We grow up seeing birds in cages, so we think that's the way to go, okay? So it's because we are culturally acclimated to seeing birds in cages, so it seems normal. And for the same thing, we are told that you should clip the wings, so we don't think about it. We go with the advice of the bird store or whatever, and it's not necessarily the right thing to do. But we've been culturally attuned to it. So what are the pros? To keep the bird from killing themselves or hurting themselves, flying into a wall. They can do this when they're scared or if they're just playing and something diverts their attention. But usually it's when they're scared they would fly into a wall. They could land on a hot surface in the kitchen. They land on your stove and burn themselves. I've seen pictures of birds doing that. They can fly into a ceiling fan. They could also fly out the door or out a window and you might never see them again. Those are probably the basic reasons why you would want to clip. What are the cons? Okay, so the cons are, what are you doing up there? Be nice. Be nice now. That's my Coco. You got something over your eye. So what are the disadvantages? Well, for one thing, it's a natural thing for birds to fly. Their bodies are built to fly. They're designed to fly. Now, I don't want you up there by the feet. Silly. I didn't mean to, but you did. They've evolved into creatures that it appears from recent research that the feathers were for sexual It's a wonder I can even keep my thoughts. I know, Coco. From recent research, it does seem like that they developed their feathers for sexual display. It was a way of attracting mates, but in time it developed into actual flight. So their bodies have evolved to be flying machines. And also recent research by a paleobiologist showed that birds only use about 10% of their physical metabolism when they're not flying. So it would be for us as if crawling on the floor as opposed to running. Okay, that kind of difference. So you don't get much exercise. It may indeed be part of the reason that there is so much fatty liver disease among parrots, that so many birds die of that, is that they're just not getting the exercise. Another thing could be diet there too. That's another contributing factor, but really the only way they get exercise is in flight. What we could call true exercise. Wing clipping results in a lot of birds being overweight from lack of exercise. Now, the other thing is we have a fight or flight response, okay? So, in other words, when you're confronted with a situation, you either try to get out of there, okay, I'm getting out of this situation, or you stay in fight. So that's like the bar fight kind of thing, or, you know, like the fight behind the schoolyard where with the two kids, it's the fight or flight. You run away so you don't have to fight. Well, these guys, they actually have flight, okay? So what they do is, if they run into a situation they don't want to deal with, they fly away. You take that away from them, that doesn't leave much. It only leaves fight, okay? Now, you think that's funny, Bob? That only leaves fight. So this may also account for some of the aggression we see in parrots, because what else are they going to do? They can't get away from you. And if you're doing something that in their world is obviously wrong, and they see it as a threat, but you don't see it because you're a human, you're from a different world, then taking away their flight means that they're only left with fight. So some of the aggression we see is probably due to that. We don't clip here, just so you know. So that's why you'll see something like Lorelei land on my face, whack, because if they still have the capability to fly, they will. Salamander can't. He has a twisted pelvis and he can't fly. It's also, there's good evidence to show that birds that are actually clipped tend to pick their feathers more. And the thing too is when they go to clip a bird, what they do is they take the primary feathers and they're supposed to cut them. You don't want me to do that here. Yeah, because you're playing. But see, here you have the primary flight feathers, okay? And what they're supposed to do is there's feathers that cover them. There's these coverts. They're supposed to cut them just beyond the coverts. Well, sometimes they cut them too far down. And if you cut them too far down, it becomes an irritation for the bird. And if they become irritated, then they can start picking at their feathers. So we do have some statistical evidence to indicate that that's the case. And it's natural too. I mean, your dog could run away, but you don't cut their hamstrings so that they have to drag their legs behind them so they can't run away. I mean, these guys could fly a short distance and they can skip, they can walk, they could run away from you. They don't tend to do that. But here's the big thing. Now, if you choose to not clip your birds, don't take them outside without putting a harness on them, okay? You can recall birds. I suggest you go to one of the centers where you can take your bird and train them there. You spend a couple of weeks, because they have these nice long aviary runs where you can train your bird to fly. Once a bird's recall trained, you're pretty safe. Show them the neighborhood so they know where everything is. And I know people that take their birds out and fly them. Now, all right, why did you come over here? You're just asking for trouble. Come here. Come here. Chloe, no. Let go. Let go. Chloe, Bob, back off. Okay, Chloe, no. You can't do that. No, no, no. No, Chloe. She's trying to get back to her former mate. That's what she's trying to do. But you can't do that, Chloe. Leave your daughter alone, you silly. So what we do... You're not going to do that. Snowball, no. No. Should get that nail fixed. a scary thing. Chloe came over. So if you do choose not to trim, which is what I believe you should do, but, you know, keep in mind, if you haven't got them trained and you're not careful about opening and closing doors, you can hear, in here we don't open the front door, so we have to go out the, I'm not sure anyone's going to be able to hear this. We have to go out the kitchen door, okay? So, in other words, there's a room buffer between where they are and opening and getting outside. So, if they're in the kitchen, you don't open the kitchen door. You have to establish areas that they're allowed in, and they're smarter than dogs. Feeding at home. Different ways to feed your bird. This is another controversy. I particularly don't like the concept of chop. Okay, and the reason for that is that, and there's a lot of people who say, "Oh, chop's great." The problem is, I think it's the University of Virginia. I'll put it in the show notes, but there's a university that specifically tells you how to blanch vegetables before you put them in the freezer. And if you don't blanch them, it describes what happens is that they develop bacteria and mold will grow quickly. You'll lose color and taste. That's two things you lose. Color and taste, plus you get the bacteria and potential molds. What's going on over there? Oh, you guys are being weird. Okay. So if you're going to put away chop, so-called chop, then you should do that. Now, I heard the lady talk about it on what used to be the behavior experts, or what do they call it? Parrot experts or something, well, some audio podcast. I heard her talking, and she didn't have any science behind what she was just saying. It's just so easy. You just chop it all up and you put it in the freezer, and but there was nothing scientific about it at all. It was just like, oh, you just do this. And see, my grandmother, she used to put food by, as they say. They put the food by. In other words, she canned, she did the frozen stuff, she took vegetables, because my grandfather had a garden, a big garden outside, and she would take and she would can things and she would freeze them, and she knew all the amounts of time that you have to steam this before you freeze it if you want it to taste good and you don't want it to go bad. So I grew up knowing that stuff, and then I see somebody just go, I just chop it up and put it in the freezer. No, that really doesn't work. But the main thing is you want to take to the science, the people who have actually studied this stuff. You girls are acting weird up here, okay? You want to look at the people who've done the science work, okay, in producing pellets. And pellets that's the right thing to give them, but there is a caveat to that. They need to have fiber and they need to have moist food, okay? So the way to do that, what I came up with, was just to take the pellets and add vegetables, especially fibrous vegetables, broccoli, cauliflower, squash, that kind of thing. Mix it in there with a little bit of fruit. So what they're getting is mostly pellets with other natural things added to it, because the pellets have the science behind them. So Harrison is my first choice. If you have one or two birds, you can probably afford it. When you have as many birds as we have here, how many birds have we got over here? You're not supposed to be up there. Come here. Come here. You're not supposed to be up there with the girls. No, that's not. No, we're not doing that. Okay, so go where the science is, which we know that the pellets are really important in the diet, but they're dry, and birds don't tend to drink that much. So get them some vegetables, some fruit. Get them something in there that's fibrous. I think the mashes are good for that. But don't go for a designer mash. I mean, there's places out on Yahoo and on Facebook where they talk about making up your own list of things, where you take seed and beans and vegetables and all that, and mix it together yourself. Use a base of something we have some real knowledge that has the elements they need in them. So use pellets in there. Put in some pellets that have been just softened and mix it into them, so you're getting the pellet nutrition as well. Make it about half and half at least. You may have to start out with, a lower proportion of pellets and add to it until they get used to the flavor. They might take it right away. You know, they only have 300 taste buds. We have 3,300, so they don't taste the way we do. Controversies are always going to exist, but if you stay in contact with your avian vet, they're busy, so they may not be able to chat with you all the time. Pick up a copy of the Manual of Parrot Behavior, the Basaba Manual for Citizen Birds. If you have both of those two texts, you've got a lot of information that you can reference, but also if you study it, or at least look at each chapter and get what you can from it, you're going to be better able to face controversy and understand, also to help your birds when they need it. So if you have those two reference works and a good relationship with your avian vet, then you should be able to work out he said, she said, and who knows. So our next subject is a subject that's taboo. You will rarely ever hear this subject discussed in public. So don't count on people talking about it. But we're gonna test the waters and talk about it today. And that's captive breeding and birds as pets. Should birds be kept as pets? If so, how should they be kept? If there is breeding, how should it be done? And how should they be trained? So why is the subject taboo? Well, in many cases, people have been misinformed by breeders. They've been told things about these birds that aren't true. I was at one pet store, in fact, and all they sell is birds. And they were telling a doctor and his wife how this baby umbrella, the umbrella was 6 months old or so, was always going to be just like this, always going to be cuddly, always going to be friendly and happy. Well, we know that's not true, especially when they reach adolescence. There's a lot that we have to deal with. Chloe, for example, had feather destructive behavior. It's rampant in the world around us. We get misinformation from pet stores and from breeders. Let's face it, they belong out in the forest, flying free. That's where they belong. But they're here now. They're in our society. There's ones that are going to live 60, 70, 80 years that are here right now. No matter how this issue is decided, there will be birds here. Unless the government comes along, and that's another fear people have, that the government will come along, and that the government will come along and say, no, that's it, you can't have these. We'll cover why that's a problem. And, hi, sweetheart. Hi, Lorelei. And one of the reasons, it's just plain fear of loss. People are afraid if any kind of regulations come out about parrots, that they won't be able to keep theirs, that they won't be able to have one in their home. Whether real or imagined, that fear keeps people from wanting to make changes. One of my personal fears is that if people, you're not going to eat the buttons off my shirt, please. You're not. I know you're a button eater and you're very good at it. One of my personal fears is that if people don't take this matter into their own hands, if they don't help make the decisions necessary to ensure that these guys are cared for well in homes, that someone, no, you're not getting the button on my shirt, you little pest. Why don't you sit on my shoulder? Now, people are afraid that the government will step in if there's any kind of regulation, and the next thing you know, they won't be able to own parrots. Well, that's a possibility, but let's face it, dogs and cats are regulated. Try mistreating a dog and having the neighbor complain about it, what happens? Okay? You get Humane Society or animal control gets involved, and the next thing you know, if that dog's not being cared for, it's out of there. And it rarely happens with parrots because people don't understand them. And neither does animal control. They don't know when they look inside the cage and they see there's sunflower and corn in there, and there's that much disgusting stuff on the bottom of the cage, they don't consider that a problem. And we know it is, but we don't have any standards, okay? So one of my fears is, if we don't set some standards, then no one's going to be able to have these guys. And I'll tell you why. We have government organizations which could take over. The Fish and Game is a good example. They're in charge of wild animals, and whether you like it or not, regardless of whether they're tame, they remain wild animals. Ask any biologist, these guys are wild animals. Any biologist that knows this species. They've been in captivity for over 2,000 years and kept around as companion animals since the time of Alexander, hence the name Alexandrian parakeet. But that Alexandrian remains wild. They still have their wild tendencies, they're still wild animals, they're imprinted, which means they've been raised around humans that they don't really know what they are. But nonetheless, they still have these natural tendencies. You'll find out if you get a bird mated to you and it becomes territorial. You may find out when that bird leaps out to bite you to protect you, or leaps out to bite someone else who's getting too close, or won't let anybody else near it. If this bird, which Sugar is, she's mated to me, if you try to get between me and her, you'll find out. Now, I had to do that. I didn't have a choice because I had to save her life. And in that process, she bonded to me. So Fish and Game could take over because they are wild animals. The CITES treaty organization is involved in protecting wildlife that's endangered. Most of these birds are threatened. Moluccans are endangered. Umbrellas are threatened. So they've already started making changes that are affecting the laws in this country. There are certain parrots now that you cannot take from one state to the next. It's illegal. That's because of the CITES organization. So that's going to keep getting stricter and stricter because these guys are disappearing in the wild. Dr. Metz told me there are no more flocks of most big birds, outside of Australia. Pretty much everybody in Indonesia, with the exception of the umbrellas, there are no flocks anymore. There are small groups, but no flocks. So as it gets worse and worse, the laws are going to become stricter. So you could lose them that way. Now I'm going to bring up something that happened years ago in California. The consumer organizations were flipping out. This has nothing to do with parrots, but it does, okay? Car repair shops were ripping people off. They were charging too much for time. They were changing their quotes, different prices. It was awful. So in comes big government. Just what we're afraid of, right? In comes big government. Well, you know what the people who were involved in all these repair shops, the honest ones, did? They got together and they formed an organization that eventually became the Bureau of Automotive Repair. They worked with the government to regulate themselves. And if you go around now to most automotive shops, you'll find that they're run fairly well. There's always going to be a little bit, people skimming here and there. But that big problem we had back when I was young, it's gone. Because the people who were going to be regulated got involved and helped to set those regulations. Okay? The honest people. And if we could do that, we could change things. Now, in Norway, and this is an example here, in Norway, they have regulations about how you're supposed to care for these birds. We have something like that here too, but not for parrots. We have it for birds of prey. Falconry. In falconry, an example, okay? In falconry, you have rules and regulations such as you have to understand the species, you have to know their physiology and their psychology. My word, most people have a general idea about dogs and cats. Like they'll say, I don't like cats because they're so independent. But when you talk to them about birds, there's a blank look on their face. What do most people say when they come up to one of these birds? When I'm at the Renaissance Fair, the two things I hear the most are, does it talk? And they talk about it like an it, okay? Does it bite? Those are the two things I hear the most. Sorry, sweetheart, I bumped your perch. That's the level of knowledge. It's not that people are stupid, it's people are ignorant. No one raises you up to tell you about birds. It just doesn't happen. Except in a very few cases where people who live with them teach their children, but it's rare, okay? And quite often the people who live with the birds, they don't really understand either. And that's because they got it from a breeder or a family or relative gave them the bird and they've been able to live with it, okay? They've formed some kind of temporary truce between them and the bird. They may not see it that way. They may say, oh, my life is just great with the birds. There's no problems, it's never been a problem. That doesn't mean they aren't going to come, okay? So what you have to do if you're a falconer is you have to know the biology and the physiology. You need to understand the illnesses that they can get and the solutions for that. You need to know when you can go to the vet, what safe environments to have them in, how to handle them, how to train them. Well, my word, now just imagine, okay, if people knew that stuff, if people knew how to handle a bird, okay, if they knew the proper way to handle them, how to take a quick examination to make sure that they knew that this bird was healthy and there was no signs of illness. If they checked the poop, they checked the weight, how to feed them the right food, all those things you have to know to be a falconer. What if people could know that here? Now, I know a lot of people are going to say, well, yeah, that's a lot of work. Well, they do it in Norway. So does that mean we're just dumber here? Is it just that Norwegians are smarter than us? Is that our excuse? I don't think so. I think it's really fear of loss. There's a great fear of government. They don't have that much fear of their government in Norway. And the reason is because it doesn't come down and beat them in the head. How many times have we been knocked on by the IRS and that kind of thing? But I think the key for us is to be able to work with and help form the organization that will regulate. And if we make it similar to falconry, well, there's regulation all over, and you won't hear any falconers complain. If that kind of regulation came into place with us guiding it, then we wouldn't have to fear it. I know a lot of people are still going to say, well, you know, they could do this and they could do that. Well, they could do that anyway, and it's coming with CITES, with the international treaties for endangered animals. That's coming. You can either let the ball roll down the hill by itself, or you can start seeing what you can do to send the ball this way or that way and possibly make it so that we can care for these birds better, and at the same time, you'll still be able to have them in your home. It's a big responsibility. And the more you know, oh boy do I know this, the more you know, the more you realize the responsibility in your hands. And think about this. Is there any other unregulated wild animal that we keep in homes? Do we have raccoons? Would you like me to bring a raccoon to your home? Would you feel comfortable with a raccoon sitting in a cage in your home? Animals that are wild are regulated for a reason, because they have behaviors and physiology that's different than ours. And since we don't understand it and we don't have a way to provide the right environment, it's not good for the people who have them. Lions and tigers are a good example, want one. And it's not good for the animal, because the animal has specific needs, like this one needs to take buttons off my shirt, and she's going to work on it, aren't you? Get back up on the shoulder, thank you. Good girl. So if we want to have wild animals in our home, then we should be self-policing, don't you think? Now, I've seen, they're so intelligent, and this is another reason we need to understand them and know how to work with their behavior. There was a video in Australia, and it shows this sulfur-crested cockatoo sitting on a water fountain. And these people are laughing, and they're talking in Russian in the background, and they're laughing, and you can tell they don't know what the bird's doing, but the bird's looking down at the handle and looking up at them, looking down at the handle and looking up at them. And, you know, they finally figured it out. Maybe the bird wants us to turn the handle. So they turn the handle, the water comes on. They're a little scared, like putting my hand near a wild animal. It's scary. I do it all the time. They put their hand down there and the bird drinks. So then they let go, it pulls its head up, because you know how they drink. They take a little at a time, go back, tilt their head back, right? These people didn't know. So they let the water go, and then the bird's looking like, handle, them, handle. I think he wants the water back on. So they do this several times. And the bird's telling them, turn the water on, I'm thirsty. You aren't going to find too many animals that have that kind of an intelligence that are going to approach another species and be able to communicate, okay? There's a lot of research and that kind of thing, and the research is important, and it's what I stand by. I go for the research first, and then the anecdotal stuff, seeing the videos of birds doing this and that, and quick little clips and what people say, that's all stuff I listen to, and it might guide me to study the research in one area or another, but it's not going to decide my opinion. Now, speaking of the birds in Australia, they if you've watched any videos of them, you see them up on telephone wires spinning around, and you see them grabbing things and playing with stuff and just doing all kinds of intense things that obviously require coordination and mental skill, and they're gymnasts, right? They're doing all this wild stuff. And we have them in cages. We don't have them in cages all day long, for most of us. I have these birds out for 3 hours a day, all the birds here, but that's not adequate, really. But we're never going to give them what they really need, which is that wildness, and we can't return them to the wild, at least as far as we know. Now, having done rescue, we're a sanctuary now, but we used to do a lot of rescue, bring in birds, try to find homes for them. But what I found was, here's a good example. One lady, after she'd been here for about a half an hour, she said, well, you know, I really need a bird. I really need a bird that'll just sit on a perch all day. I was just so shocked. I wanted to say, and I didn't, of course, I wanted to say, well, the next time we have a bird die, I could have it taxidermied for you and staple it to a perch. Would you like a tape of bird sounds to go with that? So I asked her a simple question. I said, how do they breathe? Can you tell me? She didn't know. She didn't know that they don't have muscles to inhale. She didn't know they had air sacs. She didn't know they had hollow bones. And that may not, now you may say, well, what does it matter that they have hollow bones? Well, for example, Cecil, he's not here, this is Lorelei, but he injured his foot, okay? Now, if he'd injured up in his leg, where the bones are hollow, and an infection gets in there, what do you think can travel right through a hollow bone, right through those, while the air is circulating? The infection can become systemic, because there's an injury. Now, if the infection in Cecil's foot had made it up to his bone, then it could go systemic and it could kill him. That's why it's important. Why is it important to know that they don't have muscles to inhale? Because you don't want to hold a bird as tightly as you do a dog or a cat. You have to hold them gently. You know, like Dr. Young in San Marcos, when you see him hold a bird, he's holding them like this. Even if it meant he was going to get his hands bit, even if it meant he was going to get hurt, he's going to hold them gently because he does not want to restrict the airflow. Okay. With Chloe, she had a bunch of urine coming out, just a little bit of urates, and just a little bit of feces. Well, that normally means that the renal shunt in the body is shut down, which is to say that now the poisons that are in the body are bypassing the liver completely. So if you don't catch that and get that taken care of, she had to have intramuscular. I had to shoot her in the chest with a needle 7 times because of this. If I didn't know that, and I saw the extra urine, I might let it go a week or 2. Yeah. And then you just have to have the necropsy done and find out she had a systemic problem and liver failure. Oh, wouldn't that be nice? This is why you need to know this stuff. And as far as psychology, if you don't know how to train a bird, then when you start developing problems, like right now I had Roman, he's gone back into resurgence, which his earlier behavior was to be afraid of everything. Phobic behavior, he would just run away from you. And if you approached him, he would run away. Or he'd make threatening motions if he got too close and flap his wings and try to get away as fast as he could. So he's gone back, after a couple of years, he's gone back to that behavior. So if I didn't know, and I'm working him through it, he's getting through it using applied behavior analysis. If I didn't know that, then he'd probably remain fearful the rest of his life. So that which we need to have as regulations are like those they have at Norway, and I'll have that in the show notes. You can look at it and see what they're doing. And then also in the show notes, I'll have a link to some of the falconers regulations and what you need to know and the kind of tests you need to take. Another point to consider is that if we worked with it, we could give like 2 years. You have 2 years to learn this, 2 years to certify, in order to get a license to have parrots, and then, so in other words, grandfather it in. You can keep the ones you have, but you are going to have to know something. And if you have a problem with knowing something, you just want to have them, you don't want to know anything, maybe you should rethink that. Because it's not fair to them. It's not fair if Lorelei gets sick, I don't recognize it, and she gets a debilitating disease and she dies. That's not fair to her. So we should own up for what we have and get together and start thinking about how we can establish some guidelines for caring for these things that have some weight, some legality. We have the Avian Welfare Organization. I'm certain they will help us. We have the ASPCA that worked with the Avian Welfare Organization to create the shelter book. We have them to help us. Breeders, what they do is they take the baby. Now, can you imagine if it were a human, okay? They take the baby and they take it away from its parents just after it's an egg, okay? It's a fertilized egg and it's sitting in the cage. They take it out. Then they put it in an incubator and until it hatches, and then humans care for it. And then they sell it to a bird store or they sell it to somebody who wants a bird, okay? That's what they do. And then the birds, of course, produce more eggs and more eggs. Animals that normally clutch 2 are clutching 6, 8, 10 sometimes. Can you imagine the stress on that bird's body? Plus, think of it this way. Can you imagine if someone came along and said, you got pregnant, okay? So Lisa gets pregnant, and they take her to the hospital, and they take the baby out of her uterus. And then they grow it in an incubator. And then they give it to chimpanzees to raise. You think that baby would be human? Is that baby human after it's gone through that? That's what these guys go through. And on top of that, breeders who want to, if they have a whole bunch of babies to feed, they'll take a tube and stick it down their throat and force the food into their crop, which is where their food goes. Okay? They'll just go by, shove it in one, shove it in another, shove it in another. I wish I had Coco. This is Chloe, but if I had Coco in here, that's what happened to her. I'm almost certain of it because she can't eat solid food because her crop was damaged permanently by food that was too hot. So we have to regulate these breeders. And then on top of that, they did research in a university in Northern California. It was a long-term study. And birds that were raised the conventional way, through an incubator and all that, they came out with the stereotypic behaviors, going like this, or pulling their feathers out, or other psychotic or neurotic behavior. But the ones that they had raised in long flight cages with regular nests that were handled by humans for 20 minutes a day didn't have those problems. They could raise their own families and didn't destroy their eggs. So I know that would make the cost of birds more expensive, but isn't it worth it to have a healthy, psychologically balanced bird that is really a bird and knows it's a bird, but is okay with humans? Isn't it better to have that than to have birds that she plucks her feathers, she plucks her feathers, she darn near killed herself 3 times that one we had her by pulling her feathers and cutting her body? Is that what we really want? I don't think so. And breeders are happy to sell to you direct because then they don't have to deal with, like in California, there's a law they can't sell unweaned birds to bird stores. So they try to get people like you or me to buy them so that they don't have to wait until they're really weaned. And then they try to force wean them. Most of these birds, they're supposed to wean themselves. She didn't wean herself until she was 1 year and 3 months old. Now, as more proof, Dr. Jenkins in San Diego told me that feather destructive behavior, as we see it today, started when they started breeding them. So breeding, the birds that were bred in captivity exhibited these behaviors. So again, if you think about something like what in California these repair shops, these automotive repair shops did, they worked with the government, they helped to form the Bureau of Automotive Repair so they could regulate themselves. They're not complaining about it. They're perfectly happy with it because it sets a standard of excellence for these repair shops. And if you got somebody that doesn't want to do it with any kind of excellence whatsoever, then he's probably not going to last very long because the complaints to the BAR are going to put him out of business. So again, if we get people who aren't caring for their birds properly and they don't really understand what they have and they're mistreating them, and the general public doesn't know that, we'll have somebody who can look and go, hey, that's not right. Okay? So, and if it's a minor thing, then they can be educated. Well, it looks like you need to take some more classes because you're not getting it. Well, that's fine. I mean, that's the way we could set it up. As a nonprofit, we can't get involved in setting laws because of IRS regulations. But you can see where I'm heading with this. It would behoove the people in this community who love birds to consider putting a little time and effort into coming up with regulations that would make these birds safe and also ensure that for years to come, people could enjoy them in their homes. And on top of that, the birds could enjoy where they were. Bob, you want to say goodbye? How about Snowball? You haven't said goodbye. Come here, boy. You want to say goodbye to everybody? Snowball, you want to say goodbye to the people? Say goodbye, Snowball! Snowball. That's our show for today. Thanks for watching. Goodbye. We welcome your feedback on our videos. We look forward to your insights, tips, questions, stories, and pictures. You can email us at cockatude@chloesanctuary.org, reach us on Twitter @Chloe Sanctuary, and join with us on our Facebook Chloe Sanctuary page.
Science knowledge only adds to the excitement, the mystery, and the awe of a flower.